Respected President, DPSMIS, Mr. Hassan Chogle, Vice President, DPSMIS, Mr. Yasir Nainar, esteemed members of the management, respected Principal, Ms. Asna Nafis, Vice Principals, Ms. Shoma Bhattacharjee, Ms. Mary Cruz, and Ms. Shifa Sheikh, Headmistress, Ms. Sini Menon, dear parents, and my dear colleagues, a warm good evening to you all. It's my great honor to welcome you to the webinar on the National Educational Policy 2020. Rabindranath Tagore once said, "The highest education is that which does not merely give us information, but makes our life in harmony with all existence." To say education is important is an understatement. Education certainly determines the quality of an individual's life. It improves one's knowledge and skills and develops one's personality and attitude. It is, in fact, one of the most important investments a country can make for its future. However, it's pointless to educate the mind without educating the heart. Keeping this in mind, the National Education Policy has aimed at a holistic approach wherein the academic, vocational, and co-curricular activities play an equally important role. Before we begin today's program, let us invoke the blessings of the Almighty. Let me call on Mr. Anwar to recite the prayer.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين الرحمن الرحيم مالك يوم الدين إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين آمين صدق الله العظيم.
Thank you, sir. Now, if you look at the Indian educational system, you will notice that there has been no significant change for the past 34 years. Hence, this NEP is a historic and a reformatory movement which aims to transform the Indian educational system and elevate it to new heights. It envisages transforming India to a global knowledge superpower. With these words, I would like to invite our dear principal, Ms. Asna Nafis, to share her views on this topic.
Thank you, Ms. Parvati. Esteemed members of the EC, my teachers, and especially my dear parents for watching us live. This event is specifically, this webinar is designed in such a way that you get the highlights of what the National Education Policy is all about. There has been a lot of talk the entire past 1 year, I would say, with regard to the introduction of the National Education Policy. Yes, it's a very well-researched policy which has been in incubation for so many years, 34 years of experience in teaching, learning, and the thought process has definitely changed based on the modern requirements, the requirements of the new generation. This, we strongly believe, is important that parents listen to this, understand what are the changes that are coming. Though in the due course of implementation, you would also realize what the major changes are, but still having prerequisite knowledge to understand what the National Education Policy is the only criteria or the only focus that we have this evening with our parents, because we strongly believe parents are partners in education. Had you not trusted us with your children, we wouldn't be here discussing the National Education Policy with you. Like I mentioned, these changes are going to impact our children and their future in a big way, especially with the idea of integrating various subjects, creating seamless knowledge, having experiential learning, activity-based learning. These are things that are definitely going to help our children move forward, even in the most technologically advanced world, focusing on values. Pure Indian philosophy and pure Indian values will definitely help our children become better students or better global citizens. Our culture has definitely kept us rooted to our country, India, and I would strongly suggest that all parents of our school read up the national education policy. It's impossible to read the entire policy, but at least look at the highlights from the right sources so that you understand what is this all about. This evening is specially designed for you as per the directives from the CBSE, and we wish each one of us learns this experience and are able to contribute positively to the future of our country through our children. Good evening, and please listen to the teacher who's taking up this entire event. The entire evening, Mr. Dipin will be highlighting some of the important things that are relevant for parents. So if we could appreciate the effort put in by the entire team of professional development and the CBSE department of our school, it is worth appreciating that our key functionaries have worked very hard even during this time of the pandemic and have been able to produce good learning outcomes through the blended learning model. So it's over to Mr. Dipin and currently now to Ms. Parvati to take the program forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Asna ma'am, for those thought-inspiring words. Now, without further ado, to get acquainted with the new policy, its objectives, its principles, and structure, let me call upon my colleague, Mr. Dipin Joseph, who will help you understand the NEP by decoding it for you. Over to you, Dipin, sir.
Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Parvati. Good evening, all. As per the directives of the CBSE, we at DPS have taken this initiative to help our parents understand what exactly the new education policy is all about. This presentation mainly aims to simplify and understand the transformation of the CBSE board with the national education policy. So let's begin. We start with the vision. In the first slide, we begin with the vision of NEP 2020. When we look at the vision, we understand the policy aims at the revision and rewarming of all aspects of educational structure, including its regulation and governance. To create the new system that is aligned with the inspirational goals of 21st century education, including sustainable development goals by building up on India's tradition and value systems. The vision of the new education policy is deeply rooted in Indian ethos, which gives the capability to provide high-quality education to compete in the global world. The curriculum and pedagogy must develop a sense of respect towards fundamental duties and Constitution of India and have a deep bond with the country. Develop a sense of pride and respect for the country and be responsible for human rights, sustainable development, global well-being, thereby reflecting a truly global citizen. In the next slide, we see the key principles of NEP 2020. Some key principles of the policy are respect for diversity and local context in all curriculum, pedagogy, and policy, equity and inclusion as the cornerstone for all educational decisions, community participation, use of technology, emphasize conceptual understanding rather than rote learning and learning for exams, unique capabilities, recognizing and identifying them in each student, critical thinking and creativity to encourage logical decision-making and innovation, continuous review based on sustained research and regular assessment by educational experts. Now, in the next slide, let's see how this transformation is taking place in the curricular and pedagogical structure. As we can see in the slide, presently we are having 10+2 structure. It's now moving to 5+3+3+4. The first 5 years is known as the foundational stage, that is till grade 2. And the next 3 years is known as the preparatory stage, that is from grade 3 to 5. And then we have middle stage, that is from grades 6 to 8. And finally, we have 4 years as secondary stage, which is from classes 9 to 12. The first 5 years of foundational stage is broken into 3 plus 2. 3 is the Anganwadi or preschool, and 2 is the regular schooling of classes 1 and 2. So the foundational stage, which is of 5 years, is multi-level play or activity-based learning. Now let's see what are the features of these different stages. In the next slide, we see the salient features of foundational stage. Play or activity-based learning in the foundational stage. Pedagogy of Early Childhood Care and Education, ECCE. Focus on good behavior, courtesy, ethics, personal and public hygiene or cleanliness. Focus on teamwork and cooperation. Let's move on to the next slide with the features of preparatory stage. Gradual transition from play-based learning to more formal classroom learning. Interactive teaching learning process. Introduction of subjects including physical education, art, language, science, and mathematics. Emphasis on reading, writing, and speaking. Let's move on to the features of middle stage. Subject-oriented pedagogical and curricular methodology. Subject teachers for learning or discussion of the more abstract concepts in each subject across the sciences, mathematics, arts, social sciences, and humanities. And finally, we come to the features of high school or secondary stage. 4 years of multidisciplinary study, greater depth, greater critical thinking, greater attention to life aspirations and student choice. Exposure to more subjects and enable greater flexibility. More frequent assessment of modules are done in the secondary stage. So these are the salient features of these different stages. In the next slide, we see that there is a focus on curtailing dropout rates and ensuring universal access to education at all levels. To bring children back to school and prevent children dropping out, the following steps will be taken. Provide regular trained teachers at each stage. Ensure that no school remains deficient on infrastructure support. Universal participation in school by carefully tracking students as well as their learning levels in order to ensure that they are enrolled in and attending school and have suitable opportunities to catch up and re-enter school in case they have fallen behind or dropped out. Community partnership in terms of expertise and infrastructural support. Scope of school education will be broadened to facilitate multiple pathways to learning involving both formal and informal education modes. Open and distance learning programs offered by the National Institute of Open Schooling and state open schools will be expanded and strengthened. In the next slide, we see the introduction of contemporary subjects in NEP 2020. What are the contemporary subjects which are going to be introduced? Artificial intelligence, holistic health, data science, organic living, design thinking, and machine learning. Let's move on to the next slide with emphasis on vocational education. 10-day bagless period during grades 6 to 8 for students to intern with local vocational experts such as carpenters, gardeners, potters, artists, etc. Internship opportunities to learn vocational subjects throughout grades 6 to 12. Vocational courses through online mode. Periodic exposure to activities outside school through meeting local artists and craftsmen. Vocational courses to be offered through open and distance learning mode. By 2025, at least 50% of learners shall have exposure to vocational education. In the next slide, we see that there is an emphasis on leveraging the power of multilingualism and language learning. Children whose primary language is not the language of instruction in school are more likely to drop out of school or fail in early grades. Mother tongue or home language or local language as medium of instruction, wherever possible, until at least grade 5, preferably till at least grade 8 will be implemented. A fun project or activity in schools to familiarize with the diversity of languages in the country. Let's move on to the next slide with NCFSC, National Curriculum Framework for School Education and Textbooks. The formulation of a new and comprehensive National Curriculum Framework for School Education, NCFSE 2021, will be undertaken by the NCERT, based on the principles of this National Education Policy 2020, and will be made available in all regional languages. Let us move on to the next slide with transforming assessment for student development. What are the aims of this transforming assessment? A shift from rote memorization skills to formative and more competency-based assessment. Tests higher order skills such as analysis, critical thinking, and conceptual clarity. Optimize learning and development for all students. Now, in the next slide, let's see transforming assessments and tracking students' progress across school years. As we can see in the slide, to track progress throughout the school years and not just at the end of grades 10 and 12, which we are having right now, for the benefit of students, parents, teachers, principals, and the entire schooling system, all students will take school examinations in grades 3, 5, 8, and 10 and 12, which will be conducted by the appropriate authority. These examinations would test achievement of basic learning outcomes along with relevant higher order skills and appreciation of knowledge in real life situations rather than rote memorization. And finally, this in the next slide, we see redesigning report cards to assess holistic development of each slide. 360 degrees holistic report cards. The holistic report card will form an important link between home and school and will be accompanied by parent-teacher meetings in order to actively involve parents in their children's holistic education and development. So what are the key features of this report card? Progress in project-based and inquiry-based learning, progress in cognitive, affective, and psychomotor domains, quizzes, role plays, group work, portfolio, etc. Interactive questionnaires for parents, teachers, and students, self-assessment and peer assessment, and at last, teacher assessment. So with that, we come to the end of the presentation here. So what we have learned today is based on the information provided by CBSE so far on how they are going to take it up to the next level and implement the NEP 2020 in the education system. I would like to thank you all for your patient listening. I hope you found the session useful. Over to Ms. Parvati. Thank you.
Thank you, Dipin sir, for explaining to us the key tenets of the policy in such simple and clear terms. It's a privilege for me to extend my vote of thanks to all those who have contributed to make this event a success. First, I extend my sincere thanks to the school management and our dear principal, Ms. Hasna Nafees, for providing us with the opportunity to organize this session. I'm extremely thankful to our vice principals and headmistress for their constant motivation and support. I render my thanks to the continuous professional development and the CBSE department of our school for extending their valuable help, inputs, and guidance for the organization of this program. I take this opportunity to heartily thank Mr. Harish and his team for their invaluable assistance and IT support. Before I conclude, on behalf of DPS MIS family, I would like to express my heartfelt gratitude to you, dear parents, for participating in this session. Thank you once again, and I hope you have a pleasant evening ahead.